Joining us for this 4th of December 2021 edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. First graphic here showing the cold temperatures over the eastern part of the state we had this morning. As soon as the keys kick in, there we go. Chicken, 52 degrees below zero, along with Chalk Yitzhak, also 52 below zero. And Northway, Fort Yukon, Arctic Village, just shy of 50 below, all three at 49 degrees below zero. North Pole down to 48 below. They're east of Fairbanks. And Circle, 46 below. Same thing for Manly, 46 below. And Eagle, 44 below zero. And should be warmer, will be warmer Sunday morning, and even warmer yet on Monday morning as a warming trend. Warmer temperatures kind of move in across the state from west-southwest to north-northeast. Moving on, due to that, we've got blizzard and winter storm warnings out. First for St. Lawrence Island is where it should arrive first, already kicking up the winds and snow there this afternoon. And then Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait coast, southwest coast, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, and they'll be pushing in to Bristol Bay again. Conditions coming down with the wind and snow on the increase and blowing snow, and the visibilities on the decrease. They'll be coming in from west to east here slowly with that incoming storm and frontal boundary. So we've got all the red areas, shaded areas there are winter storm warnings or blizzard warnings. In the case of Sitna Valley, it's for heavy snow, looking for 8 to 16 inches of snow, and that's for kicks in sometime around midday tomorrow and through tomorrow night. Otherwise, winter weather advisories for the central interior there, northern Kuskokwim Valley, Galena, in toward Tanana, and actually a wind chill advisory there for the Alaska Range through the passes. Winds increasing and wind chills down to 40 to 55 below zero. Same thing for the eastern interior there, Northway, Eagle, Upper Tanana Valley, 40 mile country. And then there's a winter weather advisory out for tomorrow and tomorrow night for the Kenai Peninsula for snow, not as heavy as what's going to be seen in the Susitna Valley, more of the 3 to 6 inch range there for the Kenai Peninsula. Some areas could see a little more, some areas less. And then a winter storm watch out for the eastern Seward Peninsula, Seward up to Whittier and into maybe Portage and northern Prince William Sound. That's a winter storm watch for heavy snow, some of which will be blowing and reducing visibilities, possibly a quarter mile or less. And that's for late tomorrow and tomorrow night into, Monday. And up to the north, winter weather advisory for the western Arctic coast tonight. And of course, a blizzard warning and winter storm warnings there for the northwest coast. Noatak Valley, Kotzebue into the Selawik Valley, Kobuk Valley, Bettles, Koyukuk Valley, and eventually pushing eastward. Again, that all coming in from west to east. But currently out wind chill advisory out for the eastern north slope for wind chills 40 to 55 below, and already covered the eastern interior there. And that's about it as far as warnings, advisories, and watches go. So looking at the satellite imagery, you can see a real narrow band moving eastward across the state there, bringing areas of light snow, mostly in the lower top clouds back to the west there. But that's kind of the first round, really washing out there. It stretches all the way down into south central Alaska, light snow, flurries type of thing, and some clouds around Kodiak. Otherwise, the white to the east of that line is the cold temperatures that we just spoke of there over the eastern interior. And then the big warming will be coming with the big storm out there to the west, already pushing clouds into the St. Lawrence Island right onto the southwest coast and extending down in toward the Aleutians with pretty mild temperatures out there into the 40s this afternoon for the central Aleutians out toward Shimia, and at two in those areas with the good southwest winds and southerly winds. And rolling that through again, the center up there along the Russian coast, that's going to be tracking east and then actually a little to the northeast there up into the western into western Russia there, and then a new development will pull northward and bring the snow into southern Alaska, and definitely milder temperatures here on Sunday night and Monday. Otherwise, today there's that trough. Earlier today was back to the west, that already tracking eastward and really dissipating as it slams into that Arctic high over the Yukon there in the very cold air. And the one to the back there, the storm back to the west, really sapping the energy from that. It's from the trough there. But weak ridging behind that will be very temporary as that storm moves in. We'll see for tomorrow or for tonight. Again, the heavy snow, heavy winds kick in, push into the coast and eastward into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta down into Togiak Bay. And look for an increase in the wind for Bristol Bay, not so much in the snow, staying pretty dry over the central interior. Just some lingering light snow showers and clouds, which will help keep the temperatures warmer over the eastern part of the state tonight. But winds gusting anywhere from 40 to 75 miles an hour, St. Lawrence Island up through the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula to the northwest coast, especially the Lisburn Hills, Cape Lisburn, Point Hope, even Kivalina, looking at some very strong winds there in through the Bering Strait. And then less wind but milder temperatures and precipitation in the form of rain there from the Pribilofs on down to all of the Aleutians, scattering out the showers and ending towards Shemya. And for Sunday, snow and blowing snow, St. Lawrence Island, now pushing into the central interior. You can see quite a tight gradient there between the Arctic high over the Northwest Territories of Canada and then the deep low there over the just west of St. Lawrence Island. Southwest winds, again, anywhere from 40 to 70 miles an hour for St. Lawrence Island. Snow, blowing snow, blizzard warnings, winter storm warnings, heavy snow pushing into south central Alaska, southern Alaska. Chance of snow showers for the Panhandle, and then that next low just south of the Aleutians on Monday will track eastward and then pull northward just west of Kodiak Island up toward Lake Iliamna by the afternoon. And look for a definite push of warm air. Chinook winds start to kick in. It really depending on if that low tracks to that position. Look for some pretty strong winds through Turnagain Arm and the mountain passes south central Alaska, possibly as high as 70 miles an hour. With strong winds, Copper River Basin, and heaviest snow will be on the upslope areas of the mountainous terrain, but definitely warmer and snowier and windier over the eastern interior with less wind and a lot of snow showers over the western part of the state. Cold air comes southeastward once again across the eastern central Bering Sea to the Alaska Peninsula. Lows tonight, still 25 to 45 below eastern interior, but much milder, mid-upper 20s along the southwest coast of St. Lawrence Island, so a warming trend in the temperatures to near 40 for the eastern Aleutians, mid-40s for Adak, and anywhere from 8 above for the northern Panhandle, lower 20s down to the south. Highs tomorrow into the mid-20s south central Alaska, except near the frost point there for Homer, Seldovia, and Seward. And coldest northern Panhandle, lower 30s to the south, and even above zero, 8 above for Fairbanks, so really much warmer conditions coming in, lower 30s above freezing, mid-30s possibly over the southwest interior. And lows Monday morning, just a little below zero for the extreme eastern part of the state, but above zero central interior. Lows in the 20s to lower 30s, south central Alaska, mid-30s Kodiak Island, lower 30s the Aleutians. Upper teens northern Panhandle to near 30 in the south, and above zero all the way to the central Arctic coast. And then highs in the teens for the Arctic coast, above zero most areas now except Northway and Tok, and upper 20s to upper 30s south central Alaska, especially toward Homer and Kodiak, with highs mid-20s to lower 40s for the.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Sunday morning. You can see that band of IFR with the frontal system over Atka Island eastward to the extreme, say, False Pass there, Alaska Peninsula northward across the eastern Bering Sea, Pribilof Islands, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, all the way up to just north of Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburn. North Slope Arctic Coast IFR in the downsloping flow off the Brooks Range, and some marginal VFR north of the Yukon River there, with some IFR to start over the Yukon Flats, and marginal VFR in the increase, Copper River Basin, Kinnick, Turnagain Arm, Kenai Peninsula from the North Gulf Coast right up to the southern slopes of the central eastern Alaska Range, and eastward there, almost Elephant Cove, but not quite. Panhandle VFR, IFR, eastern Kodiak Island, VFR western Aleutians, and a good chunk of the Bering Sea out west. And for the afternoon, we've got that band of IFR pushing eastward, really expanding. Now we've got a widespread area of IFR over the western interior, actually pushing into the central interior, pushing across Cook Inlet into the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, turning an arm eastward into Prince William Sound. Marginal VFR for the Matanuska Valley and western Copper River Basin, cutting off at the Alaska Range. The southerly flow there, keeping it VFR into the central upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country northward there to the Brooks Range, with some marginal VFR, possibly to Arctic Village and Anatuvik Adigan passes, but VFR, North Slope Arctic Coast, northern half of the Panhandle becomes marginal, possibly areas of, and then VFR for the southern Panhandle, and some VFR out over the central Bering Sea, including St. Paul, St. George Island, down to maybe Adak. And then for the Monday morning outlook, VFR in the increase, western Bering Sea, western Aleutians to about Atka, and just west of the Pribilos, but lots of IFR, Bristol Bay, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, and the western half of Alaska, IFR, and the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Yakutat right on the edge, and then downsloping again, the Alaska Range, keeping it mostly VFR north of the central and eastern Alaska Range. And the Panhandle looking pretty good, VFR. For the afternoon, some IFR shows up Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Haines, Klondike Highway to Skagway, marginal VFR northern Panhandle. IFR North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, all of Kodiak Islands. You can see Bristol Bay, the Aleutian Range, northward across the Kuskokwim Valley, and kind of tapers off there in the central interior. Another band of IFR northwest coast across the Seward Peninsula to the Yukon Delta coastline. And southern Bering Sea, Pribilofs, all of the Aleutians becoming VFR Monday afternoon to the western Alaska Peninsula to just east of Nelson Lagoon. And for passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR, but VFR out the north entrance there. And same pattern, lower conditions will be on the southern entrance, but VFR north side for Adigan. And Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR. Rainy, IFR. Windy, marginal VFR, increasing IFR, southern entrance, staying VFR at the north end. And Isabel, marginal VFR, but VFR in the valley. And Mentasta, VFR. Tanita, marginal VFR. Portage, lowest conditions, eastern entrance, probably will be IFR, otherwise marginal. Chilkoot and White, marginal, or VFR. And for freezing levels, 2,000 feet north of St. Matthew Island now, in the strong southerly flow ahead of that frontal system, and up to 10,000 feet to Adak and Atka. Otherwise, the surface still well south of Kodiak Island and right across Dixon Entrance. Icing, look for considerable moderate rime icing, moisture, deep moisture layer, southerly flow, warm air along the west coast there, and increasing icing into the central interior across the Gulf of Alaska. Panhandle could see some mixed icing of a lighter variety, and lesser threats, just a possibility out over the western Aleutians. And jet stream, strong jet stream across the southern Bering Sea there, 165 knots just north of the east central Aleutians, 130 knots across the Aleutian Range, Kodiak Island. Kind of a split flow there, southwest 95 heading up across the Kobuk Valley and westerlies, 130 knots there, Dixon Entrance into British Columbia. 9,000 feet strong flow around that low up over the eastern Russian coastline there, along the eastern Russian coastline. 60, 80 knots takes a turn to the south and southwest, 75 to 90 knots into the interior. 3,000 feet southerly, 60 knots, Kodiak Island to the western Brooks Range. Widespread moderate chop there, interior Alaska, the Alaska Peninsula, all the Aleutians, and Kodiak Island.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the sun doesn't stay at the sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane about 30, 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button, it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button, it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from the space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system is going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
That's not too bad there for the Panhandle along the coast. South to southwest winds on the south coast, 15 knots, seas 5 to 6 feet for the north coast. Southerly winds of 15 knots with 4-foot seas. Lynn Canal, northern inner channels, north at 15, northwest 15 for Stevens Passage, and southeast at 15 for Clarence Strait. And then for the day on Monday, we've got a little bit of an increase in the winds. Small craft advisories for the central and north coast, all out of the south at 30 knots, seas running 13 to 15 feet. South to southwest winds on the south coast at 30 knots. And small craft advisories for the inner channels, central and southern inside waters, Clarence Strait, Stevens Passage, winds will be southeast at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, south winds 25 knots, seas 5 feet. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, small craft advisories, milder southeast wind 25 knots tomorrow, same thing for the North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories, southeast winds 25 knots, same forecast for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, south of Forelands, northeast at 20. Northern Cook Inlet, north winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. And for Monday, Northern Cook Inlet, southwest winds 20 knots, seas in the ice-free areas at about 5 feet. Small craft advisory, south of the Forelands, southwest 30 knots. West 25 knots for the Kamishak Bay area. And west at 40, gale warnings there for the Barren Islands. Southwest at 35 knots for the western North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, eastern North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories for 25 to 30 knot southerly winds. And for Kodiak Island tomorrow, south to southeast winds 25 to 35 knots. Full gales there from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, south at 45 knots. Bristol Bay, gale warnings. Southeast 40 knots, seas 10 feet. Storm warnings for the Alaska Peninsula for south winds sustained at 50 knots, seas just under 20 feet. And for Monday, winds drop off and swing around to the west-southwest at about 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Same thing for Bristol Bay, southwest at 30, seas at about 10 feet. And from Castle Cape to Sitkinak and up the east side of Kodiak Island, west winds at 40 knots with seas just under 20 feet. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, gales and storm warnings out for those areas. For Unalaska Island, southwest 45 to 50 knots. Unmak Island, a little lighter, southwest at 40 to 45 knots. And Adak and Atka, west-southwest 30 to 40 knots. Gale warnings from Kiska Island, or Amchitka to Shimia, west winds 35 to 40 knots, seas around 20 feet. And for Monday, from Shemya to Amchitka, west-southwest winds 30 knots, seas at about 16 feet. Adak and Atka, west winds on the south shores and south 30 knots, Bering Sea side. Small craft advisories for Unmak Island, west winds 30 knots, southwest winds 30 knots for Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, gale warnings. Southerlies 35 to 45 knots, seas at around 16 feet. Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, gale warning, southwest winds 35 knots. Pretty good sea heights there, 22 to 28 feet. And 45 knot southerly winds for St. Lawrence Island, but storm warnings out for Norton Sound, south winds sustained at 50 knots. Those will come down to 30 knots from the same direction. Westerly winds 35 knots for St. Lawrence Island, west-southwest 30 knots for the southwest coast. Gale force westerlies for St. Paul, St. George, St. Matthew Island, 35 knots, seas 15 to 20 feet. Up on the eastern Arctic coast, east-southeast, 20 to 25 knots. Brisk wind advisory central and west side. Central coast southeast at 25 knots. East 30 knots, western Arctic coast, and then storm warnings from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. Southeast sustained 50 knots. And then for Monday, west winds 30 knots from Wales to Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, southerlies at 25 knots. And the western and central, actually all of the Arctic coast, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots. And for tonight, blizzard and storm warnings start to kick in, southwest coast, especially St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula first, and also the northwest coast to Cape Lisburne. And then gradually wind, big increase in the wind, and to a lesser extent the snow, but blowing snow, whiteout conditions pushing eastward, and that weak trough dissipates and becomes really a non-factor toward morning as the front pushes inland. Along the west coast there, snow and blowing snow increase from east to west, and it stays dry though over the eastern and northeast interior to the eastern Arctic coast, mostly clear skies with offshore flow. That's what'll stay the coldest, but warming up considerably there into Bristol Bay with that warm front. Kodiak Island, not too bad for the panhandle. Outlook for Monday. Next system pulls northward to Iliamna Lake.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.